Okay, today we'll be talking about benchmarking. The learning objective of today's session is that you should be able to describe the benchmarking process and the list of sources for and levels of benchmarking, along with the pros and cons of one specific level of benchmarking, which is the non-competitive benchmarking. So, in order to understand benchmarking better, you need to understand what is a benchmark. To put it simply, it is a point of reference against which things are measured. It's a scale, to put it simply. Now, but how do you measure this point of reference? It can be done by asking questions about the product or service. Example, how many, how much time, how much money, how reliable or how well made is it? Moving on, let's take a very simple classic example of a classroom setup. Let's assume that all of you have, or you individually have written a test and you've got your scores very recently. Can you really gauge or understand how well you've done until and unless you understand how your classmates have performed? For example, let's have a look at this particular figure. Let's assume that this figure denotes, the height denotes the performance level. It's possible that you might be standing here, or you might be standing here, or you might be standing here. Or how do you know if it's a good position to stand in or not until unless you have a clear picture of where the others are standing? So, to put it simply, you have to know how well the competition is doing in order to succeed in your business. It's not good knowing your own score if you do not know what your opponent's score is. Let's come to the payoff. Benchmarking helps you understand your strategic and operational strengths and weaknesses and those of your competition. And if you know both, you can actually adapt strategies in order to overcome those gaps and have a successful strategy which you've adopted. Gain success in whatever strategy you're adapting. The strategy could be the growth in market share or growth in profits, or just a growth in company, or achieving customer satisfaction, whatever. Now let's come to a very formal definition of benchmarking. It's a continuous and systematic process by which organizations measure their performance against that of best-in-class organizations, determining how the best-in-class achieve those performance levels and using that information as a basis for their own targets, strategies, and implementation. Now, if you have a look at this definition, there are two key terminologies or two key concepts which you need to pay attention to. The first one is it's a continuous and systematic process. What do you understand by continuous process? Benchmarking is not a one-time process where you just do it once and stop. You need to keep doing it in order to be the best in class, in order to hold your position. Also, please note that when you're comparing yourself with another organization during the benchmarking process, that organization has to be the best in class organizations. It cannot be any company which is doing better than you. It has to be the best in whatever category, whatever level you choose to do your benchmarking process in. This is a more simplistic and illustrative form of the benchmarking process. As you can see here, you're first trying to find out what your performance level is, how do you do it, and then what are others' performance levels, how did they get there? You find the difference, find the gap. And then based on the gap, you come up with a creative adaptation. Now, creative adaptation is basically defined based on whether you've going for, let's say, a competitive benchmarking process or a non-competitive benchmarking process. Whichever one you adapt, based on that, you have to creatively adapt your process. During the benchmarking process. And if you do it successfully, you find that breakthrough performance. You will achieve that breakthrough performance. Let's take the Xerox case. Now, I would like you to do a little research on this on your own, but to put it simply, Xerox was one of the first companies to have adopted benchmarking process very successfully. In fact, The benchmarking process that Xerox adopts is benchmarked by other companies. It is so good at it. When it was adapting benchmarking process, I mean, today the company itself admits that it would probably not be in the copier business today if it were not for benchmarking. It had some very dramatic results. Like quality problems were cut by 2/3, manufacturing costs cut by half. It also was successful in cutting down the development time by 2/3. Direct labor was cut by 50%, and corporate staff were cut by 35% while increasing volume during the whole process. So, benchmarking in itself is not the cause for these improvements. What happened at Xerox is that in adopting the process, the climate for change and continuous improvement followed as a natural result. In other words, benchmarking can be a very good intervention technique for positive change. Let's look at the sources for benchmarking. To broadly divide the sources of benchmarking, you can do it in two different ways. It could be either internal or external. Now, within internal, you have benchmarking process which you could adopt within the business, the same location, either the same location or other locations, or it could be different businesses but the same company. Now, external benchmarking could be done with the main competitor against same location or other locations. You could do it with similar industries. You could do it with different companies in any location, or it could be the best practice across the world. So you have the levels of benchmarking again based on the sources. Internal, as the name itself suggests, it is carried out within an organization, and it is the easiest approach of benchmarking since data and information are readily available. For example, you could be benchmarking practices in other divisions or branches. Now, this might be relatively inexpensive and easy to implement, but it may not help in really changing the mindset of employees since the same is internally focused. Let's go to the next one, which is the competitive benchmarking. Now, this involves the analysis of best in whatever category you choose to. Comparing your own performance with the best in class and adopting the best practices. Now, this could involve comparing average debtors, creditors as a percentage of revenue, R&D as a percentage of revenue, or if it could be on the product side, it could be technology, features, type of packaging, warranty, guarantee period, etc. Now, this, as the name itself suggests, it's a competitive benchmarking. So basically, you're, benchmarking your competition. So as you can assume, or as you can gauge, that this is basically the main disadvantage of competitive benchmarking is data is not readily available because no competition would give away information which makes it the best. So that is the main disadvantage of competitive benchmarking. In case of non-competitive benchmarking, which is the next level of benchmarking, what you're benchmarking is a related process with an organization which might be in a completely different industry. This involves benchmarking a process by measuring and comparing. Now, it could be a related process in a non-competitive organization. It could be a related process in a different industry. It could be an unrelated process in a different industry. Now, the last one is a world-class benchmarking or the best practice. Now, the name itself suggests it involves looking towards a recognized leader for the process being benchmarked. The organization that performs in the best manner across the globe. That is the world-class benchmarking, as the name itself suggests. It's the best in the world.